3, 2, 1. And they're
So here we are, 2024 race, the Lake in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, which goes around Lake Winnebago. It is 88 miles, start to finish, all the way around the lake. This year we had a headwind going into the first half, and so here, as I turn around the map, this became a tailwind. And great little race. Some folks just do it for fun. Some do it as part of a serious group ride. And so you get an entire mix of folks. We are usually released in different waves. So you kind of self-allot yourself into the wave that you want to be released with, and they give you the average speeds that you can expect in these waves. Here we are in wave 2 out of, I believe, 10 in total. Wave 1's estimated speed that they post is 26 miles an hour average. I would say that is not the entire time. That is sort of once you get going a few miles in. Wave 2, just a little bit slower at 25 miles per hour, and we certainly did hit those speeds, and actually we're probably doing 28 for a few miles at some point. Sounds pretty fast, and it certainly is not slow by any means, but the one thing that I will add there is that it is much easier when you're in a group this size, because there's really nobody who's out there gunning to sprint, so it's all one steady kind of blob of a group, and so you're getting quite a decent draft. There's no way that I would normally be able to do 28 on my own for any real sustained period of time, and even in my smaller group rides, I certainly struggle to hold that speed. I can more comfortably, if we can call it that, hold about 25 miles per hour, and in smaller groups 22, 23, it feels okay and pretty sustainable. But here it really didn't feel so bad going a little bit faster. And the waves vary in size a little bit. I think that they release you in groups of 75 or so, so it's definitely a pretty big sized group. The important thing, I think, in these types of rides is to figure out, first off, are you there to race, or are you there to keep up, have a good time, and sort of put yourself to the test? If you're there to race, then you're going to want to likely be a little bit closer to the front, unless you have teammates that are going to be up front and able to come back and pull you back up, which is what quite a few guys did. They had their stronger riders all the way in the back, getting a lot more benefit of the draft, while their teammates were up front, and you would see them, as we would come up to the climbing section, come back and start towing their riders up front so that they were nice and fresh for the climb. But if you're just out there to have a good time, you can hang out at the back and you get a nice draft, but the one thing that you've got to be careful for is because you don't really know who knows how to ride, what their riding skills are, and so any accident can cause quite a split in the pack. We didn't have any this year, but the last 2 years that I've done this, there was a crash that happened sort of in the middle of the pack, essentially splintering the wave into two separate pelotons. The back group is usually not able to catch back up because the speeds are quite high, so it would take quite a bit of effort to get back on the wheel. And since it's so flat, it's not like there's really much momentum that the front group is going to be losing at any point in time. So it's a great ride. The only thing you have to sort of mentally prepare yourself and be on the constant lookout for is to make sure that you are in a safe enough spot. I prefer to be sort of here on towards the middle of the road rather than towards the shoulder, because I figured, worst case scenario, if there's no cars, I have a little bit of an escape into the opposing lane. But I stayed vigilant the entire time. So let's talk a little bit about what it's like to do a ride or race like this. And in this instance, I was not planning on making any stops for food or water. I shoved some Cliff Bars into my back pocket, which I figured for 4 hours is going to be decent enough, along with some gels. The only note that I will add, I do like Cliff Bars very much, especially the peanut butter one, but it's not the easiest thing to eat on a bike. It's quite dry, becomes quite difficult to breathe if you're breathing through your nose and mouth. So, pick nutrition that you're kind of comfortable eating on the bike. I didn't put a lot of thought into that. And in general, my prep work for it wasn't anything too special. There's the teammates of mine that I'm riding with. I am, we all went out for dinner the night before. I even had a margarita. So our approach was kind of like, we are out here to race a little bit, make it all the way through without stopping and get the best time that we can. But we are also out here to have a good time and to enjoy cycling. So as much as I would love to give amazing input as to how you should prep and when you should go to bed, the reality is that I kind of just act normal. Around this time of year when I'm doing a lot of riding, I'm eating pretty decent, maybe have some junk food here or there, but I try for the most part to avoid it, except for after big rides when it becomes a little bit of a treat. And so I kind of keep things the same day to day. And on the morning of, usually the first thing I do is have a good medium-sized breakfast. And I think for me, it's also important to arrive early enough for rides like this, where we're kind of going to be doing 20 miles an hour. We're still warming up here, but we're 21 miles an hour. And for me, it's important to be warmed up and ready to go and push the speed right away, especially at 6 in the morning. So I think it's critical for me to get there early and ride at least, at minimum, if I don't have time, half a mile. But I go out there and do a mile or two just to get myself warmed up a little bit, so that I've gotten my heart rate already up previously and I'm good to go with whatever speed the group launches at. Now this is going to be a shorter video, mostly featuring the first third of this race, which we're still in. And that's because when I was approaching the halfway point, I accidentally tapped the screen to get a status update just to see if it was recording. But the part of the screen that I touched was actually the icon that zooms in to double. So about 70% of the footage that I have is actually going to be cropped in quite tight just on calves and the riders' butts in front of me, which is not the most exciting footage. So I decided to chat over this and discuss my approach to rides like this. In a lot of my videos, you'll see that I'm often doing a group ride, and I really like the fact that the group pushes me. The reason that I do races such as this one is because I want to push myself even further. I consider this sort of like the test. If riding solo is just like normal doing your homework, group rides, especially those with some sprints and where you're pushing it with some faster guys, those are almost like a quiz. And then rides like this are really sort of like a final test for me personally. So the battle is really just against myself. I'm looking to see if I can better my time from last year, and I know I've got quite a ways to go, because my final time, I forgot what it was. I finished out of 606 riders. Let me see, I have the results here. I finished 210th with an overall time of 4 hours, 7 minutes, and 38 seconds. Now, the guys who are finishing top 50 and 50th spot is one of the Fab guys, 3 hours, 33 minutes. That's quite a gap. And then to your top 3 that are all around, actually it's all the way top 20, look to be around 3 hours, 23 minutes. So you had about 21 guys coming in towards the line together. And so that's really what this is I've got a lot more in terms of improvement that I can do, and that's what I'm aiming for to do here. So I really like these rides. They are mentally challenging just as much as they are physically, until eventually the group will split away from me, and at that point I'm able to relax a little bit. But I told myself that I can keep pushing, and I certainly did this time around, even though I was alone for much of the second half. And that became one of the things that I used as a tool to help me in that second half. Anytime that I had the opportunity to sit on someone's wheel for a little bit or partner up with somebody, that's exactly what I aim to do. So in rides like this, I think try and stick with the group as much as possible. You can see here we've got like the nice double line going. Everybody's pretty organized. It's all pretty mellow. And again, the speeds still aren't quite that fast. We're going to pick up the pace more. Unfortunately, that's where I cropped in, trying to get a status update. So I'm not going to show much of that, but I will show some footage of us going into the climb. And the climb, which is coming up here, while I did do it a little bit faster than in the 2 previous years that I've done this race, I know that there's quite a bit I can do, and that's not just in fitness, but of course weight. That's where it comes into play. But at that point, you know, we're past the halfway point, I think, when that climb happens. So I'm pretty happy the fact that I got a tow from the group to that portion of it, and you'll see it here in just a second. This is also where the video is now zoomed in, so it becomes a lot more bumpy and a little bit more grainy, so apologies for that. But here we are, we're heading sort of into the forest preserve. There's this one major climb, I forget how much it is, I want to say it's 800, 900 feet. And about, when I finish it, I still probably have about 15, maybe 20 guys behind me, so I wasn't the dead last out of here, but certainly nowhere even close to being near the front. If I would have held with this group up the climb, then I have no doubt I would have been able to hold with them for at least another 10 or 20 miles, if not further, as we get to the finish line. And going over this footage, which I haven't really seen since this race happened in August, it makes me think to, you know, just how much further I can push it than I ever thought I could, because the first time that I ever did this race, it was with the same team. It was a buddy of mine. I was chatting with him, and he said, you know, if you want to join us, here's our team name, sign up, just mention that, and then you'll be put on the roster with us. That's exactly what I did. I showed up on the morning of, and it was a little bit tight. It was like 5-6 minutes before our wave launched, and I think at that time we were wave 3 or 4, and I didn't have a chance to stop in and go to the bathroom, and so I asked them, I said, you know, are you guys going to be stopping at any of the water stops? You might skip the first one or the second one, but what point are you guys planning on stopping at? And one of the guys just looks at me, he's like, we don't stop, dude. It's a race. Now, mind you that while I can do long rides and I've done centuries, I've never ridden 80 plus miles, almost 90 miles without putting my foot down to the ground. Because even when you're out on a group ride doing, let's say 50 or 60 miles, first off, there's almost always some sort of coffee break in the middle, but even aside from that, you've been pushing it for a while, you'll hit a red light, and you'll have a few seconds to take a break. If you have an open bar, you know, just you could toss that in your mouth. It's so different doing high mileage when there's no pressure to stop or not stop versus something like this where you're really testing yourself and the aim is to not put your foot down for the entire portion of the ride. So that was the first time that I ever did this length of a ride without stopping, without putting my foot down. Water I did grab, and Gatorade, there's going to be guys who stand off on the side of the road at the stops usually, and they're handing it out, which is really nice. And in a race like this, you are best off, and this is in quite a few different rides I've seen this. In others, I don't worry about it as much if it's a more casual ride, but what you may want to do is to bring a bottle that you're not afraid to toss out and just leave on the side of the road, because here coming up we do the handoff, and I brought some water bottles that were just old used bottles that I didn't care about anymore, and so I replaced them with whatever it was that they handed me and just tossed them to the side. That allows you to go much smoother. I didn't play any like games of trying to juggle anything on the bike. And one other thing that you can do, of course, wearing like a camelback is one option. So you've got your 2 water bottles and you can put some more on your back. But another thing that I saw some guys do, and very common, especially pro riders, you'll see this on TV, but you can just take an extra water bottle or two and just shove it down sort of the back of your jersey by your neck if you really want to do that, and kind of polish that one off first, toss it off to the side. But I figured I was okay with just the handoffs and would be totally fine. Now, the first water stop, everything went as planned. They were handing out water, all was great. At the second one, there was actually nobody out there. You had to pull over and grab a bottle and continue on. At this point, just after I go through the rest stop, which I don't think I recorded this portion here, but after I go through the rest stop here, I did connect with one guy, so we did a nice job of switching off and taking turns pulling. And he wanted to stop for a break at the next stop, which wasn't too far down the road. It was only maybe like 12, 15 miles. And he had already stopped here. He actually beat me up the climb that he was able to stop up ahead, and he was just getting going as I was passing, so we stuck together. I did not, so at that point I said goodbye to him and just continued on because I had a good tailwind, I had a good momentum, good pace, and I did not want to get a worse time than I did last year. Now we're already sort of in the final part of the race. This is where it becomes a little bit faster. You go downhill here because it was mostly climbs up gradually, and then there's one big descent here. Connected with these two guys who actually both caught up to me, and the guy in front who's in the red, I thought we were gonna like take turns and rotate and pull, but he kind of like surged ahead, never really pulled off the front, so we ended up kind of just sitting on his wheel here and doing our thing. I'm usually more than happy to rotate and switch. At this point, I don't think it was as important because we are nearing the finish line. I have no idea that once we actually get down towards the last mile straight or so that they're going to pull away from me. And I'm not going to stand in their way because both of these guys would have been from a wave that is before me. And essentially that means that they caught up to me by, at least 10 minutes, because that's about how much they stagger the waves. So me trying to go out in front and really race them, there's no sense in that because their overall time is still going to be faster than mine. Here's our descent. There's one main intersection here, and it pays off to be in at least a small group than solo, because they do stop all traffic across this major road. And if you're solo, they don't always stop it. They sometimes will have you stop. I have seen one or two solo cyclists stopping there, but there is a car up here. You can see, and it radios down there to the officers to stop traffic. So this was really nice. We came in at full speed. You can see we've got a decent clip, 55 kilometers per hour, and we were just able to sail through. There's nothing worse than having to stop at the bottom when you've got all the momentum going. So we were able to sail right through, and then now we are back in the Fond du Lac area, heading towards the finish line. And this is just the time when you're wondering, like, where's the finish line. It never seems as close as it should be. It probably really isn't that far, but at this point you're tired, cramping up a little bit, been sitting in a saddle for 4 hours without getting out of it, and finally cutting ahead to where the finish line is. Again, I know that most of the guys here are from the wave that's before me, so I'm not really interested in trying to keep up. I kind of let them go and slid off to the side in case somebody else wanted to go around me. I would look down at my time and I could see that I was a minute or two faster than before, and I was pretty happy with that. So I kind of sat in here, cruised it out to the line, was just happy that we were accident free, and then it was time to go and have some food. The beauty of this race is that they provide a couple beers if you want afterwards. I'm usually not in the mood for beers, but definitely had some pasta, whatever else they had there, some rolls. In general, it's pretty decent. It's a well-supported ride. Again, I haven't stopped at any of the water stops to see what other snacks they have there, so I suggest making sure you have your own. And in general, I've been on rides where, like the Apple Cider Century, which is a great ride, but all they put out is sugar and they lack a lot of salt. So I kind of don't always rely on the rides unless I've done them numerous times before, and I end up bringing my own food. Here's one more guy who I knew was coming up on me, and again, have at it. He's probably got a much faster time than I do. We rolled in at the end here, and I think my time was a little over a minute, maybe two faster than what I did last year. So I was happy with those results. If you have your own stories, your own experiences, or tips for rides like this, do feel free to post them. I think doing rides like this on closed circuits is wonderful, a lot of fun, and I highly recommend that you can try it. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you guys next time.
Thank you, my butt hurts.
I can only imagine.